Welcome to the Unexpected Podcast. My name is Justin Mahwikizi, and today's great guest is Tony Graves, who's a combination of educator, mentor, technologist, AI practitioner, government consultant, and an enterprise architect. Make this conversation worthwhile for everyone, from the factory worker in Illinois to a CEO, a parent, a teacher, or a student. Tony, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here, Justin.
Well, thank you very much. And you have such a storied career. We're going to weave through it by going from the beginning, if you don't mind. My first question for you, sir, is when you were a kid, uh, what first made you curious about technology?
Well, it was my dad. My dad and I were very close. And I asked him, I said, Dad, I want to help your clinic because at the time we had paper patient files and a new thing had come out. It was Windows 3.0. And we were very excited about computers. So he took me to a computer training, boot camp. So I did well in there, and then he was like, "Well, I'm impressed. So we'll see how that goes."
Okay.
Later on in life, we started a business together. It was a hotel management hotel that we've set up, and I designed the brochures and so on. And he said, "Hey, you remember that class you took? This has come full circle. So now you know what to do." So I remember him for being such a big influence in my career.
That's awesome. That's a great testimony to his parenting, which was to instill, find what you were good at, and invest in it. What was the first computer you remember using?
It was a Windows 386.
Okay.
Back then, we had monochrome. And for our viewers or listeners, monochrome was either green and black or orange and black or white and black. So when Windows came out with the 386 Pentium chip, it was huge because the color schemes on your computer
That's right.
games and all that was just revolutionary. And everybody wanted to get a computer. So when I moved to the United States, I got one. I got a brand new one, and that really helped me because I was the only guy in the dormitory that had a computer with a, disc recorder. So we could make, MVP, MPs and all that stuff, for entertainment. So that's one of the things I remember from back then.
That's great. What lessons from childhood still guide you on how you approach innovation today?
The lessons I've learned over the years is always innovate, always be curious, always be um, asking questions because we don't always have the answers, and people tend to shy away from things they don't understand. But I've always had a humble attitude about things where if I don't know it, I'll just be honest about it and say, hey, I don't know. I want to learn. I want to go uh, to this class, take this training, and so on. So I've been very restless. I don't sit still. And that's been one of my things where I'm taking a class, I'm taking a course, I've done my master's degree, I'm thinking of doing my PhD in something, ethics or
Oh,
philosophy or
wow.
something. So it's the restlessness, it's the curiosity, and also sometimes ambition. I think the ambition also carries us as immigrants to always be the best in
You
whatever we
do.
do.
Yes, yes. Because you're setting an example for the next generation, and so especially your children and nephews and nieces, we always carry a responsibility. It's ingrained in us to set an example, a positive one as much as we can.
That's true.
Now,
My generation comes, I'm sorry,
no,
go ahead.
go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so my generation comes, or my family comes from educators. My grandparents were educators. They set up schools, taught a lot of, you know, uh, indigents and, orphans. And the name is very synonymous with education in Ghana. So I feel like a burden. It's a burden and a sacrifice, and also an opportunity to say, listen, education is a key to a successful career.
I mean, you just answered my next question, which is why you got a master's in educational technology. I was going to say why education, but it sounds like it's a family affair. that you were raised into, and you truly believe in education as a concept. Would that be correct?
Exactly, that's very correct. Yes. So teachers, doctors, medical professionals, technologists, innovators, entrepreneurs, yes, are all very present in my family. And we are always sharing also and very careful that we present ourselves as people who can influence and guide our youth to become better.
Absolutely. Now, looking to, today, or even thinking about the future, what is the biggest mistakes schools today here in America are? What mistakes are they making in preparing students for the future?
That's a loaded question. If you say mistakes, I think the opportunities or missed opportunities are what I'm referring to. For immigrant families, I think some of the things we as parents need to understand is how we can let our children be who they are and pick their course, of course, with guidance, because as there are Asian tigers or Asian tiger moms, we also have African lion dads because or lion moms because if you're from Ghana or Nigeria or any of the West African countries, or in fact in the whole of Africa, we want our kids to go to America and to be the best of the best. So we need to make sure that while we're instilling in them the purpose that we want to see them, fulfill in their lives, we also have to give them grace to mold themselves because you they have to make their mistakes and they have to recover from them and they have to move on from whatever that they feel like they need to do in their lives. So it's not a American education system. I think it's a parent missed opportunity if you're not engaged well with your child or children's future and education.
No, I agree. I agree, and it's a concept we need to push further. The parenting matters. What you put your kids into matter. One of my personal heroes, other than my father, of course, but my personal heroes is Thurgood Marshall, who became the first Supreme Court justice in the United States, or first Black Supreme Court justice, and he was one of the leaders on the Brown v. Board case. His father uh, had the foresight, almost like yours, in the sense that he would take him and his brother to small claims court on a weekly, so they could sit in the front row and see how the judge and the lawyers interact as children, and that helped prime his brain for being a lawyer, a good lawyer, and a judge when he grew up. And so, what you do as a parent, how the opportunities you create for your children are very important. So, being involved and being perceptive to see what they're good at or they're interested in will help you guide in that parenthood. Would you agree with that?
Exactly, that's right. And then you cite a very good um, testimony of how showing, believing, and walking the talk influence Thurgood Marshall. I can also cite one of my personal heroes, Colin Powell from Jamaica, when he went into the military and how he trained himself and how he met his wife and how he fit into our cultural and political landscape. He was somebody that was well respected and he worked hard for it. It didn't come just by chance. So yes, these things that we talk about of courage, of discipline, of molding first ourselves so we become a reflection of our children, is very important.
I agree. I agree. What skills do you think will matter from a technical skill perspective over the next 20 years?
20 years is a long time. In fact,
Uh,
6 months
True.
is
6 months
it's a
is a
long
long
time.
time.
2 weeks from now is even going to be more important because, as you may know, AI is taking the world by storm. And as I sit here, I am registering for hackathons and doing self-study as well as reading posts on LinkedIn just to get a pulse of what we're doing with this new revolutionary epoch in our lives. And I mean, if you read the Pope's encyclical on AI, you realize we're at a time, a turning point where um, other than the 90s, we've never had anything like this, which affects our lives, our way of thinking, and even the way we interact with our neighbors. Because um, this is something that, will either create a lot of jobs or be very disruptive in how we work and how we live. So, for my audience and for my children or for anyone who listens, it's being curious, is searching for answers, going to places that may not make you comfortable, but you have to adjust your expectations and go anyway, and always learn as much as you can about AI. There'll be practitioners, there'll be ethicists, there'll be philosophers, and all kinds of people who will tell us how to use this technology. I don't think we should be afraid of it. We should harness it well to make our lives better. If whether we're making our planet safer, whether we're producing good food for humanity,
Yeah,
and how we're also raising our children, will be very important in this coming age.
absolutely. And uh, the biggest risk I think with AI for the children, the next generation, is making sure we raise them still believing they matter, and not just the computer will solve it, right? And so, giving them the challenges, whether it's through technology or other life activities, to teach them that they do matter and their decisions and their agency is important. Will be clear. Thank you for that answer. Now, after 15 years in technology, what have you learned about people from a philosophical perspective?
People can be very unpredictable. Uh, I love people. I love being around, my friends and colleagues. But in corporate settings, in normal settings, people are people. So, what I've always taken from my journey is that you give people the grace to be who they are. Sometimes we also need to give ourselves grace because we are human and we need to be able to adapt, learn, and always improve what we're doing. As a technologist, sometimes I think we elevate technology to a pedestal where we suffer for it because we put so much emphasis in it, and then we realize it's the people that makes technology works, not the other way around. So what we're learning this week is, holy golly, Microsoft spent all this money on AI and the bill has come due. So they're pulling back, right?
Yeah,
So the question is, well, how come they couldn't figure it out? You know, is the people more important than the technology that they're trying to push or, you know, give to the world? So if they're telling us we can't afford it, then maybe we should ask real questions. Is it the technology or is it the people that matter?
that's right. That's right. And one of the questions I always ask myself, it doesn't matter which field, but sometimes why do people resist change, even if that change will ultimately improve their lives? Is it a communication problem from the leadership or the folks bringing the change, or is it instinctual, where uh, people are just uh, as resist change just for change's sake?
I think everybody can make a good decision around technology. When cell phones came around in the late, 2002 to 2010, I think, there were a lot of some of these same issues, right? There was a privacy issue, there was the screen issues for children, and then there still is. And now we're learning that, well, the kids can have their cell phones locked up during the school period and then have it back. It took courage for someone to say, listen, I don't think we're doing our children um, any good by having them have kids having their phones, excuse me, in the classroom. So now we're seeing legislation come through from all corners of the United States where it makes common sense to do what the law says to do. Have kids be in class and learn and not be consumed by technology. Same way that we need to also look at this. We don't need to be consumed by this or by the profit motive that says consume AI, consume at what cost, at what measurement, you know? So we've come what 3, 4, 5 quarters where the issue changed from hey, you got to use AI. If you don't use AI, then you're not being effective. But now it's come to, well, let's step back.
Step back
This
and
is
slow
costing us
down.
money. So let's slow down. Let's slow down. So, so the question answers itself.
No, it does. It
What?
does. Now, and we recently spoke about how some companies are successful at adapting with new technologies, and others are not so successful. A good case that we spoke about recently was Kodak not adapting to the digital space and eventually being phased out as a company, as a leader in that space. What separates the organizations are able to adapt and stay with the times and adjust strategy, and others that remain stubborn in their way of doing things that ultimately will spell their doom?
That's a good question. And I don't think we can exhaust that, the reasons in the sitting. But I think one of the big factors are people, letting people um, express themselves, be able to communicate what they're seeing. I don't think anybody walks into a job or a corporation and does not desire that the corporation will succeed. Everybody has that intrinsic value of making sure that they look successful, they are surrounded by successful people. So it befuddles me that Kodak, a big American company, is no longer because they were not looking around what their friends were doing, what their partners or competition were doing. I mean, Justin, as a businessman, you know that to create income for yourself, you have to know your market, right? As a technologist, I need to know my market, know what sells, what people are looking for to make their lives, their work easier. So I can't sit in a pie hole somewhere and say, hey, here's a typewriter for you. I think this is going to be wonderful for you. No. So if they're
Right,
out of business, it's their fault and their fault alone. Nobody can say, I didn't know. No,
right.
it is your job to find where your next market is and make one if there isn't.
Yes, that's a very important one. Making markets, especially in corporate America, we find often leaders are waiting for permission to create opportunity. And when everybody expects somebody else to give them, to create the opportunity rather than be innovative and entrepreneurial, even within a company, entrepreneurship, as they call it, is important to drive up solutions up to management that could bring the team forward. And so, being able to create opportunities I think it's a really good skill set to have as an employee, but as well as corporate leaders out there.
Absolutely, yes, that's very important. I remember my time at Here Technologies when the market shifted from, DVD navigations to, wireless navigation. If you've been around for as long as we have, you remember where MapQuest used to be the market leader in navigation.
Yes.
Today, they're not really where they are, right?
No.
So, so yes, and here they needed to turn things around quickly because for the longest time, all they dealt with was navigation in cars. Then they realized, by the way, navigation is important, but how about location?
Yes.
Location, because location is where we now are, dealing with security, mobility, and enterprises. So data in terms of where your FinOps is, where your credit card statements come from, where your money lives. So if your money is in Panama somewhere, they're going to ask you, how is it that you're sitting in Chicago and your money is in Panama? Give us a good reason. That's
Yeah.
part of the market, right?
Yeah.
So there's always that innovation. There's always that thought process that says, let's turn things around. Let's look at how we can make our market fit the current needs of people.
Um, Speaking of which, there's a concept in technology that I hear, I understand it. It's in fintech as well, but I wanted to get your perspective. Um, it comes down to blockchain technology and the different solutions being built around it. And there's a wording that they call trustless systems.
Yes.
Why such a move away from trust? Why remove trust? What's the impetus to remove trust? I believe in building trust, and but the current narrative is let's get rid of trust. Let's build systems that are trustless. Explain that for the average person who's not in technology as much.
I may get this wrong, and because I'm not an expert in crypto and all blockchain and all that, but I can give you a little synopsis of where we are now. Back in the day, trust was built on a handshake, right? On your spoken word, on the family name, on titles. And then we had the gold standard. Remember when everything was tied to a standard saying there's money, there's this big pot of gold that generates wealth all around the world. And then eventually they said, well, the gold standard is really not important because how can we measure goods and services produced in a country when it's tied to gold? So now we're going to go bye-bye with gold standard. In the same way that we have this trustless issue with Bitcoin and the crypto environment and so on, because soon or very soon, quantum technology is going to dominate our world. So when you say trust, negative, positive can be true at the same time. And that's the reason why trustless is less important now than it was when we first started thinking about this. Also, crypto was built as something that anybody could use, right? It said, well, you can be stateless and still have money in China, US, America, Latin America, anywhere. But now we're finding that, well, it may work in certain conditions. For example, I would like to have crypto, embedded in resumes and, application systems so that I don't have to keep sending a resume to dozens of companies, right? There's only one standard that everybody can, use and it will reduce that friction between jobs and employment. So when you say trustless, it means that it is something that's implicit. It's already built into the system. You don't have to question it. But humanity being what it is, I think we may have to rethink this trustless thing because then we may have to say, okay, well, then we're going to wear something on our bodies that tells us who we are
Mhm.
because AI can mimic humanity or mimic your personality
Right.
and so on and so forth. So we're going into matrix territory when
Yes.
we say trustless because how do you verify, right? And
Anybody can become anybody anywhere. Basically, that's
that's
the world we're
exact
in.
exactly exactly. So we're going to deal with that more in the future,
Fair
if not
argument.
sooner.
Very fair argument. Fair argument. What do most people misunderstand about artificial intelligence, AI?
I think people think it's the end all and be all, and also that machines implicitly trustworthy, right? But it's human thought, human um, you know, or creativity that brought this around. So if we are flawed, then our machines and our thought processes are also flawed. So that's why it's important that people understand that this is a probabilistic, deterministic technology. It doesn't give you original answers. It gives you what you think is the nearest truth or answers that will satisfy you. So people that say, well, hey, Siri, give me, an answer to this question. Hey, ChatGPT, give me an answer to my problem. You need to verify this. You need to make sure the data is accurate. You need to be the man in the middle, the human in the middle, because the machine can give you some answers and it may be wrong. It doesn't mean that it's right. It's just trying to determine based on your own questions what it feels you'll be comfortable, accepting as an answer. So people shouldn't just have that trust that says, "Hey, it's a machine, it's a computer, it's supposed to be smart." No, it's not smart by it's smart by design, but not by um, you know, uh, you know, by origin.
Right.
If you can
Not by
understand that.
essence. Right.
But right, the sense is that it's a machine. It can give you good answers, but it's not the be all and all of answers.
Now, you're an expert in Microsoft 365 and SharePoint and Copilot, those worlds. How are those tools being used in corporate America, whether it's on the nonprofit side or the for-profit side? And how does your skill set help corporations and business leaders improve their business operations and business outcomes?
That's a great question. I've been a SharePoint expert for the last 20 years, give or take. When SharePoint came around, um, the closest thing that we had was Lotus 123, if you remember,
I
right?
remember. Yes.
Yeah, so we had Lotus and had, I think, Novell or something close, which was all based on the NTFS file system. Back in the day, those were huge. And then eventually, Microsoft came out with its document system in 2003. And then in 2006, it became SharePoint. And from there, a generation of, you know, enterprises have used SharePoint in all its iterations. And I've used it on premises, in a cloud, and in various enterprises from the military at the naval base to small businesses to nonprofits to corporations of any kind you can imagine. And it's a big enterprise. SharePoint has evolved for so much that, I mean, since its inception that um, it's used for everything. And now it's anchored into Teams, into,
Right.
OneNote, into Foundry, into AI Copilot, all of it. So it's become a very huge ecosystem. And I'm glad to be part of that, enterprise or that part of Microsoft because one, it solves a lot of problems with how to share data. It also gives users easy access to information. It gives a lot of IT folks headspace to not think about how to secure the data because it's implicit by design. If you
Right.
create a SharePoint site, create a folder, or create a site, only the users that you want to have them in there will be able to see the stuff that you put in a site. So that was revolution, and it still is because even today people still struggle with how that works. Like, well, I don't get it. It's like, well, it's in the cloud. Just think of it as a cabinet in the cloud where you have a key that you can get into just by who you are. And of
Right.
course, that comes with Entra and Azure and all these different things. So, as a technologist, I give Microsoft my great thanks because it's fed my family and it's made me who I am, who I am. Having said that, the technology is also evolving. So
Yeah.
now there's Copilot and then Workmate and all these other things that are making our uh, work more easier than it used to be.
Um, from a system administration perspective, as these various tools are speaking to each other, security, for users to have specific access and all that, has that been simplified or has that been more complicated from a management perspective with those tools all in one organization?
Oh no, it's been made more complicated. You see, as things change, things still sort of more or less stay the same, but the level of the attack surface, if I can use some of the terms here, has also multiplied because Back when you used to just have one computer and maybe a phone, now we have, an Apple iPad sitting there. You have two or three phones. You may have a Bluetooth, device. You may have a watch, and all these things proliferate. So somebody can send you an email, can send you a text message, can send you a WhatsApp message, and you have to be very careful on what you click on because the minute you do that, they grab your cached, uh, you know, information that they can duplicate and get into your systems. So the systems have to evolve with the way we live and work now, where we have Zoom, we have Copilot, we have um, WhatsApp, we have Facebook, we have all these things, calling for attention, and the human mind is distracted. So if you're not careful and you click on something, oops, there it is, it's gone. And the remediation is even harder because the sophistication that these hackers have is unparalleled.
Hmm.
Now these AI tools are so, I'm hearing this that, well, they don't want to release a newer version of Claude because they found out that it can be used to hack into very important databases. So to answer a question, more or less,
Yeah.
the more we evolve, the bigger the attack surface is, and the more work we have to do to protect ourselves, and so on. Sometimes that involves cost and administration and sleepless nights and so on and so forth. So nothing has really changed. It's just the way things are are much more difficult and much more harder to prove because if you listen to news, who's being targeted? Our senior citizens, our moms, our dads, who haven't caught up yet with how things work now. Back in the day, they say, "Well, don't let that stranger in the door," but the stranger is already in the house because they're
Yes.
already
Yes.
sending you fake emails about, romance and how to make more money and so on. So we have to be really careful.
It's one, you're making the case for a trustless system where every node has to re-verify, who that user is, to
Exactly.
prevent those type of hacks where you can't just move around just because you got a little password. So you have to, you know, re-verify every time you access different systems. I now understand the trustless concept, but I do remember in the mid 2010s, we're coming home to visit our father. It's in the evening, maybe 8:30 p.m., and we find him on the phone with some person in a different country, telling him there's a problem with the computer, asking him to give him access, and he was about to give them access to the computer, because that generation trusts that if somebody's calling you on a matter, it's important.
Exactly.
And that was then, so it was more analog hacking.
Mhm.
But today, like you say, simply clicking on a link, opening a message, can open you up to all kinds of threats.
It is. And it's far more dangerous now because our data is everywhere. If I want to be seen and known as an expert in my field, I am expected to be on LinkedIn. I'm expected to be on, Microsoft Hackathon. I'm supposed to be on Teams. I'm supposed to show my picture, and I'm supposed to show that I am who I am based on the things you're seeing in these applications. But they all can be faked.
Yes,
If you Google my name, Anthony Graves, there are dozens and dozens of Anthony Graveses out there. So
absolutely.
so for me to stand out, I need to make sure that I present the best version of me, which means that I have to work harder than everybody else to get myself out there. And that exposes myself, exposes my friends and everybody to all these negative side effects of where our technology is at the moment.
Oh, you have to. Even on LinkedIn, you got to be careful who you connect with, especially now you get strangers connecting you from everywhere. Even a simple connection gives them access to a list of your connections. They can
Exactly.
piggyback on that relationship. And when your connection gets a request from them and they see that they know they're connected with you, they trust them more. And next thing you know, he's out there doing all kind of damage, he or she. And then it's not until months later, one of your connections says, "Hey, this guy sent me some weird stuff." And I'm like, "Oh." he went through me to get to my buddies. So you got to be careful, and you got to always be on alert.
That's very true. But you have to take it as it is because the more we network, the more we learn, the more we, associate with people that are out there doing good things. I know of people that have a lot of network, people in their network, and they're thriving because the good outweighs the bad. Of course,
Right.
people are going to do what they always done, which is abuse the system.
Yes.
But if you're careful in how you present yourself, I think people will take you. For who you are, in terms of, hey, Justin, do you know Tony Grace? Of course. He's at my church. He knows me, he knows my children, he knows my wife. We're all running the same circle. So let's give ourselves some grace and forgiveness if something goes awry in those interactions.
No, I agree. Tony, if I give every small business owner in America 1 hour with you, what would you recommend them, or what would you tell them to do with AI immediately within their business?
I would say adapt. Look for ways to save money and process and time. Time is the most valuable asset you have right now. If you find that you're checking your emails 3, 4, 5 times a day just to prospect your customers, you may need a better system. Um, and learn as much as you can, but also know that there are so many AI systems that it's overwhelming even for the experts. So pick one, and I would recommend Copilot, Microsoft, because there's already a system built around AI in the Microsoft application space. So you have SharePoint, you have Word, Excel, OneNote, and of course, Copilot will make your work easier. But I can't guarantee that uh, the button on the Copilot in your Word will stay where it is as long as it is, because I've seen them move things around. It's always changing from week to week. So be patient. Um, Again, read as much as you can, educate yourself, learn its limits, and um, consult an expert if you need to for guidance.
Great. It's a great answer. And what, if you were to put yourself in, let's say you were part of a small business of 5 employees, but you guys are trying to compete with the bigger players at scale, and the only path was to leverage AI or other solutions, technology solutions. What strategic mindset, what architecture can we think through where a smaller company could compete with a much larger company by leveraging those systems that currently exist?
That's a very good question. Again, AI has reduced the need for um, architecting enterprises, to compete with the bigger boys, if I can say that way. I mean, look at Anthropic, the team at Anthropic that started this with 5 people, right?
Wow.
Um, uh,
I didn't
uh,
know
uh,
that.
yeah, it was a brother and a sister, and maybe 3 other guys, that started this. Now it's $1 trillion valued institution that has changed the world in a matter of 5 years, right? We
Yeah,
didn't know about AI, LLMs, pre-COVID. Post-COVID,
it's true.
we heard about Pfizer using artificial intelligence to produce vaccines for us. And then eventually the world became acquainted with AI. So if Pfizer at that scale could produce vaccines to save the world, a 2-man team, a 3-man team with the same expertise can come up with something equally good and challenging for the market. I mean, look at DeepSeek, right? It said that they built their LLM with only $6 million. Of course, I don't have $6 million. I'm not going to say it's only, it's a fortune.
Yes.
But compared to what is being spent on these other systems, it's a drop in the bucket. So what I would say is scale has been reduced to intellect. Intellect has been reduced to how capable you are in thinking strategically in what AI can do for you. So we're no longer talking of, well, let's go on. the market and find a solution to this problem. We say, well, hey, what do you think about this? Um, Iterate, give me a better version of this question. Well, what if I added a second person? What will that person do? So our ability to think outside of our limitations has greatly been increased. The limitations and the walls that we've had traditionally has now been reduced. So which means that our enterprises, our ideas, our hopes and dreams will be much better implemented if we think things through thoroughly before we go to market with these applications.
Great. What would you recommend to a high school kid who's about to graduate in 2026 on how to plan a career long term, knowing these changes are happening from a technology perspective, where some of the careers he thought he had access to may not necessarily be as available or as plentiful as 5, 10 years ago when he was growing up?
Yes, that's a very good question for our politicians, our planners, and our educators, and of course myself. What would I tell my children? I'll tell them the world has changed. It will continue to change. You need to have the communication skills. You need to have the people skills. You need to have the desire to learn new things. You have to see things from a different lens. So while you may say, well, I'm a physicist, you may say, oh, I'm a physicist by training, but I also have a background in music. So I can tell the difference between the sounds I'm hearing from a star 5.3 billion light years away from a bubble popping in my backyard. So you can tell the difference between what that sound is and that sound here. So it's going to be a world where people have two or three core um, backgrounds or training, and then they will be merged in different ways to produce newer ways of looking at things, right? It's because if you are a welder, you're probably going to be more than just that. You're going to have a way to test, the alloys and the strength of materials and so on, and devise ways to fix things. You may have a robot that goes out, or a drone that goes out and flies over a bridge and says, "Hey, this part of the bridge needs this alloy to fix it," and you're by yourself with a truck that does all this. So you may not need a whole crew to go out and fix, something out, somewhere and so on. So I think that's where our future is going, where people will have multiple careers, may be able to, invest in themselves and change the trajectory of who they are and what they do for income and to
Yeah,
support themselves.
no, I agree. What um, what is your greatest accomplishment that most people may not know about you? I know you have many, but which one is the one that means the most?
I think that over the years, I've looked at um, accomplishments in the career field, but I think my greatest so far is my children, having to be a father and to mold beings into the image and likeness of our Creator. It's not an easy job because nothing comes close to being inventive, being protective, being self-aware as having your own children. And once you accomplish that, there's nothing that comes close. I won't mention the job or the title or the money I made. No, none of that matters. But it is the children that God has graced me with that makes me really proud of myself, in a way that I cannot compare to anything else.
Great answer. You pass. You pass the exam.
Thank you.
Um, because here's the thing. I wrote the book. I wrote a book called The Manufacturing of Poverty, and they always ask me why I use the word manufacturing. And some of it comes to parenting in the sense that you're molding those young minds into making either the same decisions or better decisions than you as they grow up. And in that process, it's a hard process, but it's a manufacturing process. There's processes that lead to good outcomes, and then there are processes that lead to bad outcomes or bad decisions. And so I always tell parents, look at yourself as a manufacturer and plan that way rather than, I got to do X, Y, Z. No, why is important to do these things? They'll give you the purpose and the why. And with that, you can almost walk through anything.
Exactly. Exactly. You're right, my friend.
So as a mentor, what have young people taught you? Obviously, you're mentoring your children as well, but throughout your career, the people you mentored, what have they taught you about people in general? What have they taught you about you as a person to yourself?
I've been blessed to be also a soccer coach, as you know, as you may know,
That's
and
right.
I've coached some of your children. I've seen them play with my children. So, what I've been very surprised is the little things, the effort, showing up, uh, you know, being participatory, being smart about, well, let's give somebody some grace. Because sometimes we're very easy to say, I don't think this person is going to cut it. And then you realize with every time they show up, something's changed. Something's changing. Something is picking up. I can use my own son. When he started, this is my younger boy, when he started, he loved tennis. And I said, this sounds like my dad, because my dad loved tennis so much. So we're all going in that direction. First day of soccer practice, he rebelled. He said, I don't want any of this. I don't want to play. I'm done. I want to play tennis. So fine. Just pick up your stuff. Let's go home. Then gradually one season, which was pretty bad. This was when we had the heavy rains and they had the cicadas.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
we struggled through that season as a coach and as a player. And
Yes.
they came up to me and said, Dad, I think I want to join the travel team. Whoa!
Wow.
Because this is a kid that wanted nothing to do with soccer. And to see that 360 in the little man or the little version of me was joy to my heart, but it
Yes.
also taught me the value of giving people grace. Because if I'd said, "No, son, you're doing this today. There's no way we're going to cancel. We've paid money, and we've no," I said, "Fine, do it your way," and he came around, and now he's on the field, scoring goals, impressing us, and making things, um, you know, not better for me, but better for himself
Right.
because he decided when he was ready. So that's as referred to earlier in my opening monologue. I was like, well, we immigrants, we always want to push our agenda on our children, but sometimes we need to step back and have them, control where they think they're going to go, and that's huge. That's something I've really learned from that experience.
Well, that is a great lesson in leadership because that experience as a coach can be transferred to the corporate world, IT leadership. And that's a really good lesson for our audience. Now, you just talked about soccer, and there's a World Cup coming in. So, second to last question, sir. What do you think about the World Cup? Which team do you think, or which country do you think has a good chance of winning, and which country are you supporting?
I don't want to make enemies of my friends. And that's a very loaded question. So I would just say, thank God Ghana is in the tournament.
There you go.
And I can only support my Ghanaian counterparts and comrades and wish them well. We all come together in the interest of peace, humanity, and then enjoyment in trading our skills on the pitch. We're not at each other's throat. We're not fighting. We are at peace when we are watching soccer and showing that we all have humanity and dignity. So to that, I'll say, play on.
Tony the diplomat, a great answer. Very great answer. The United Nations could use you one day, huh? Uh, but as far as Ghana, my firstborn was born in 2010 during the World Cup, and Ghana was in that tournament as well, and they got to the quarterfinals, and they were within this close of getting into the semifinals on a penalty, and Ecuador, I think it was Ecuador, with Suarez did the the big,
Unthinkable.
save, took the red card, but saved his team. And so, but I do wish the Ghanaian team luck in in this competition, and may they surpass their predecessors if Providence orders so.
We thank you for giving us the omen to prosper and succeed. And we and as our counterpart in Africa, we say thank you for the well wishes, and we accept it warmly.
Sir, yes, sir. If a viewer here, a business owner, someone who's interested in talking further on the technology side and strategy or architecture, how do they reach you?
Well, they can reach me on LinkedIn, which is where I'm at. So it's Tony K. Graves. I also have a blog called The Work of Tony. The work of Tony, TONY.com. I have some articles I've published out there. It's still growing, and I'm sure this podcast edition will pop up there when it's ready. So, my friend, I thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed the conversation as usual. And I thank you for hosting me on this program.
It has been an honor, Tony. Thank you so much for your time, and I wish you a great rest of your week.
Likewise, sir. Thank you.